Hey guys, welcome back to Vince Fail Custom. So today we're going to do a work in progress video, which is fairly simple, but still a little bit tricky, but it should work out pretty well. These are two Bowen Designs items. This is a Captain Britain Bust, and this is a Bucky full-size statue. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the legs off of Bucky, and we're going to add it to Captain Britain, and we're going to make him a full-size item. But the bust, we're going to try to keep that down the line because that might be turned into another character for somebody else down the line. So it's not like this whole thing is being not utilized. So it's kind of cool that we're taking these legs, we're adding it to this guy, because to sculpt all this from scratch is kind of like a lot of work when you could just take this and add it there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop this off, and then what I'm going to do is I got to tweak out the legs, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look at the pic that was sent to me. Yeah, so these legs are actually not cuffs. So that's the only thing that's going to be a little tricky, is to actually sand these down a little bit, which won't be the end of the world. So what I'll do is I'll probably cut these off, sand these down, get these tweaked up, and then go from there. Going to try to utilize and keep this as clean as possible. We're not going to strip this down. The colors and everything looks pretty good. I might have to try to match the colors as best as I can. I might have to sort of do a little bit of blending with the legs and stuff. Might have to kind of tweak the line a little bit, clean that up as well. But because one of the main things about this is there's a little chain around his neck, as you can see, that's fairly loose. So if I was to strip this down and mess that all up, it might be a little bit difficult to kind of recreate that, which I can do. But we're trying to keep it as simple as possible without going overboard on the work. The person that's getting this likes the colors, and it's going to fit in the collection really well with all the other Bowens. So that's pretty much from what I'm going to do there. So I'm not going to cut him off the base yet. I'm just going to put him on the shelf for now. We're just going to work on the leg. So I'm going to go into the garage. I'm just going to use a hacksaw, and I'm going to cut right underneath the belt, because that's kind of exactly where this should work. Because when I'm looking at the pictures, this is what he has sort of as shorts. But it's just over here. Now, I'm not sure if he wants to keep the cuffs yet or not, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't. So that's just a little bit simple. So, if you're out there and you want to customize stuff and you like a Bowen Bust, but you want to make it a full size, you can find a cheaper statue like this. You can sew off the legs and attach it, and then you could always use the upper body for something else too down the line. So this is where we're at right now. So I'm just going to go into the garage. I'm going to saw this off. I'm going to strip down the paint, get all this cleaned up, because this is where most work is. And then what it'll do is we'll have to wrap him up when we're ready to attach him, but we'll get him chopped up later. So let me go and get all that set up now. So what I did is I went out yesterday and I stripped down the paint off the legs. Basically I did an acetone bath. I've done a video on my YouTube channel on how I strip polystone stuff. So we got all the paint off, and then what I did is I used my Dremel tool and I sanded down the cuffs. So we're going to leave the boots like this. So he sort of does have like boots in some of the old school comic books that the artwork he sent me, but he really didn't have any wrinkles and stuff, but that was old school. So we decided to kind of keep it like this, so it looks pretty cool. So that's going to be how the legs are going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prime this up now, and then I'm going to keep fine-tuning these boots and cleaning them up and smoothing them out and getting them nice and even. Some of the stuff up here is really not that even because of the way the cuffs were sculpted, so I got to try to even up that stuff as well. And then once this legs is pretty much set, then we can chop off the bust and we can start planning on how to get that attached. So I went in the garage and I chopped off the bust. It was a little bit tricky because there's a metal rod going into the torso, and the metal rod was connecting into the base. So what you have to do is you have to Dremel it out and sort of go in angles and then kind of wiggle this and pop it out. I did chop up a little bit extra here, but it's not the end of the world. But if you put the body here, it's looking pretty good. I think this is going to fit as perfect as it can be. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is if you try to put him on flat, he leans backwards, as you can see. You need to have him straight up like that. So by doing that, we run into an issue where there is kind of like a gap missing there, but that'll be all filled in and seamed up, which is not a problem. What I might need to do is just kind of sand down a little bit more here because it might be a little bit too long, but it's kind of like there. But I'll just kind of do some measurements just to make sure. Now I do have one little bit of an issue, is this piece here. It's kind of hitting the leg. So from what I was told, this rod is kind of drawn differently for different artists. So what I'll do is I'm going to ask the client, do we need this piece here, or could we just chop it off and keep it like this? Only because trying to get this leg in here like that, it's kind of like almost hitting it. and then it would be kind of hard to paint too. But I'll see what he says. It's all up to what he wants. But for right now, what I want to do is, in my garage, whenever I do casting and molding in the past, I have a lot of empty containers next to me, and I pour in extra resin in there because I don't like to waste it. And I create a lot of these little circle bases because you never know if you'll need them. And what I do is I stand them up, clean them up, and they're perfect for something like this. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take the British flag symbol and we're going to create an etching in here on the base. So this way we can stylize the base, and we'll have them like a nice and simple, nothing crazy, and it saves a lot of room for his collection. The only problem is this metal rod for the base I popped out is a little bit longer than what it should be, but I'll just go in the garage and grind this down. So the main thing right now is we're going to create a hole, we're going to create a system so this kind of comes in and out. I already have the hollow brass rod, we'll cut that out, and we'll get the legs set up. So once the legs are set up on this base, I can maneuver him a little bit better and everything instead of using the original base. But once I Dremel out that hole and we get the rod, you can see he pretty much stays on there no problem. I mean, the feet are so spaced apart where it looks good. And it'll be easier to get these feet in first and then work out the torso than having it very top heavy and him kind of wobbling on you. So we'll kind of get that set up. So let me go grind that out. We'll Dremel the hole. We'll line that up there. We'll get this all set up and we'll come back. We'll use some Magiscope, get the feet set up. And then after that, we can start attaching the upper torso. Alright, we're going to try to do this a little bit different. So I got the K&S hollow brass rod. That's pretty much as close to the perfect, piece where it can slide in and out. The reason why I do this is if you just kind of work out Magiscope or Aves, and if you put this in and out, you should keep destroying it, and before you know it, it's all cracking and your guy's wobbling. So you want to have some kind of hollow brass rod. Now, you won't always get lucky with a square key. If it's a round key, you would have to get a round piece, but the problem is if you have round, they turn unless they have another key or magnet in this foot. But once you have a square rod and it goes in there, it locks into place and you're good to go. Now, the problem, as you can see, is I Dremeled through it, and if you try to put some Magiscope in there, it falls through. So we're going to do a little bit opposite way of doing this. It's just a little bit trickier, but if you have some glue, which you do, make sure your Insta-set is already open, but don't spill it on your bottle. So basically we're going to line him up like this, because that's pretty much where the foot's going to go. We're going to put this back down like so, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to glue a little bit here, a little bit of glue in there, and then we're going to kind of push it into place where it's going to kind of go. Grab our Insta-set, basically what we're going to try to do is just lock this piece. Now I didn't glue into the hole, I glued on the outside of the K&S rod. So if all works well, we slide it out and we have the piece locked into place there. So now we have all this opening here. So what I'll do is I'm going to mix up some Magiscope or A's, whatever you have, and then we're going to kind of fill in that area, and then we'll let it sit and it should work out pretty well. So just to make sure, double check. Now if it falls off, it's not the end of the world. Put him in there, kind of make sure he's lining up, and we're good. So that's kind of a good spot. Go slow, make sure it pops out, and we got it there. So let me get some whatever material I'm ready to mix up with. I'll probably use some maybe Aves, because it's a little bit softer to squeeze in there. We'll fill it in and we'll let it sit for the night. Alright, so time to attach the body. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky. Hopefully this doesn't take 4 tries, but what I did is I put some Magiscope up in there and I put a metal rod I cut, and then we have the metal rod that's going to hold it from there. So what's going to happen probably is I'm going to have to use a lot of glue around here, and then I might have to chisel it out. It's the only way to really hold it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a bunch of this more Magiscope, and we're going to just jam it into here like so. So we'll just do a test real quick first, make sure we're We're kind of going to where we want to go. We're lining up really good. Now the problem is if you leave it alone and you walk away, he'll probably sag down. So we'll have to use glue back there. So we'll look here on how the Magic Sculpt kind of hit the other Magic Sculpt. So that works out pretty well. So pop this back out. Now as you see, sometimes if you have dust in there and you put Magic Sculpt or Aves, it pulls it back out, which is a good thing. This way you know it's going to grab a little bit better. So let's roll this back in here like so. Grab some water, kind of get a little bit tacky again. Now, because I got Magic Sculpt on my hands, I want to make sure I don't mess up any of the statue. Okay, so we're looking good on that front. So, next step is probably the best bet, is we're going to take a bunch of glue. We're just going to throw glue here. Now, like I said, it's going to squeeze over, but it doesn't really matter at this point. We're going to have to clean that up anyway. As long as it doesn't squeeze all over to the front of the chest and get on the the lion. So now, what we do is we take this down. Got to make sure we're lining up correctly. Take some of this off. Basically, the glue is just there to let it stay in. That was my Insta set. Gotta look at it from the side. Let's go back a little bit more. Looking pretty good. So let's throw some more Insta set around in here. Make sure, be careful if you start, holding it in certain directions, it might not hold too well, so we just want to try to get some Insta set around there. Okay, so we got that going pretty well. We're lined up on the sides pretty well. We got enough clearance on both sides with each hand. We're pretty much centered. He's got a little bit of a twist, but nothing major. That's fine. So we have some Magic Sculpt left. So what I want to do is grab our tool. And you can't go too crazy, but enough just to kind of help lock this in. We're going to use A's to seam all this up tomorrow. But we want to use all this Magic Sculpt up now. Really make sure we lock this in place. That's a good thing I like about Magic Sculpt. It's good for filling in areas like this. The older your Magic Sculpt gets, a little bit tougher it gets when you first mix it up. It dries a little bit faster. It's a little bit more sturdier than Aves. So it's really good for doing stuff like this for the inside. Aves is good for filling up the detailing and all the other stuff. Now, when you do this, though, you don't want to jam this in here and break out all that glue or accidentally squeeze the upper torso upwards and take it away from the bottom of the piece we just connected. Just gotta keep filling it in enough that it's going to sort of keep it there and not squeeze down if it does by accident. Don't be afraid to put the Magic Sculpt in all under behind the connected pieces, meaning that there's plenty of room to throw A's on there and detail up. So you see how we got some gap over here. Try to Now glue isn't going to be a problem if that glue kind of seeps around. You could just Dremel this off and clean it up. You can sand it down. You could prime over it and paint it too if it's sanded, but usually you're better off trying to chisel it out and go in there with some Aves. And if you do a little too extra Magiscope on the sides, you can always chisel that out a little bit too. It won't hurt it. So that is pretty much looking good. Looking pretty good. I like it. Got it lined up pretty well. Yeah, it's messy back here a little bit, but not the end of the world. Alright. Now, if you get concerned with something like this too, like if you didn't really get it lined up correctly or if it keeps going backwards, if you sort of kind of put him towards something like, you know, to hold his upper body like forward and let it cure, like that's holding it, and you let it sit, it'll stay cured. Now, like I said, Magiscope cures fairly well, so what I'll do is I'll probably put this on the shelf somewhere and do something like this just to make sure it holds. So we'll let this kind of cure up for the night, come back tomorrow, and we'll start seaming everything up. Okay, so I'm going to start working out the waist and get everything all evened up. I went in the garage and I just Dremeled out a little pieces that were kind of hanging out. So I have my Aves, which is just regular Aves mix, and I'm just going to go ahead and patch this all up. So I had a chance and I masked this off and I did a little prime work. I figured I was going to have to spray up here a little bit. There was no way around it. I knew I was going to have to spray over this line anyway. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I did one thing of primer. I sanded some areas down. I did a little tiny putty work. But actually, I think there's just one little tiny spotted putty work. Other than that, it came out pretty clean. So right here, it's just these two spots right here I needed to sand down. So I just need to sand this one down just a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask it off to the point where we can just do the dark red. And then after that, we'll make the line pop a little bit more. And that should be pretty much it. As long as I clean it up pretty well, we should look pretty good. So what's probably going to happen is I'll have him all painted up. And I'm probably going to send out the base in 2 days. So he's going to be pretty much done. And then we'll come back once we get the base back and I can paint that up. And then we'll finish out the video. Alright, so we're going to start patching this up, and from what I can tell, this color is pretty much sort of it's like a red mixed in with a little bit of mahogany and probably a drop of black. I mean, I don't want to put black into it, but I got to get this kind of like muted dark red color without going crazy. Now, you can't just mix straight black into it. It's not going to work. It's probably got a little bit of brown in there to get that darkness, so I'm going to do it that way. So I've just been going over it real quick one more time. There was a couple drops over back here from the primer because I couldn't spray it far away. I had to spray fairly close, so we had a little dripping, so I kind of cleaned that up. I'm going through the legs one more time, patching anything up around there. I think what I might do, though, is once this is all said and done, just for the boots, I might just give it a little bit of a darker color. I don't know, I might just give it a little bit more of a pop darker color. We'll see what happens after it's all done. But for right now, it's just pretty much mixing up a color and trying to match it the best I can. I'll go up a little bit around here and everything. And once I kind of get this color going, then what I might do is sort of pull off the masking here and hit some of that color on the arms. Just to kind of blend it all over and make it a little bit more uniformed. Alright, so there's a little bit of overspray. Like, over on here, this medallion, you could just take a tool like this, kind of lick it and take off any of the excess paint that went on there. Same thing over here. Because, like, factory paint from Bowen Design stuff is usually very, like, candy shell and a little bit shiny to them. A little overspray is not going to kill it in the worst way in the world. Because we're not trying to do a full repaint. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some satin varnish from Vallejo Mecha Varnish, and basically going to go all over the piece like that and give it a nice coating. That'll give it a little bit of a sheen where it will feel like a Bowen statue with the rest of them. And then after that, I'll pull off the masking. I'm going to repaint this anyway because I just didn't like the color on this thing. I figure we could make this pop at least a little bit more. Plus, trying to get it underneath in here and stuff, it's just a hassle to try to mask it off when I can just mask off the leg and the hand and do a better paint job on that anyway. Sometimes it's just easier to repaint an item than to sit there and try to mask all this off and then screw up all this leg here. I'd rather get that leg correct since it's so close and then do this afterwards. So let me do the varnish now. I'll send pictures to the client, see what he says, see what he likes. If he's okay with the color, the boots the way it is, unless he wants the boots a little bit darker or something, we'll go that route. But other than that, we're pretty much almost done other than the base. Alright, we're going to try to work on the base now. I want to get this sent out to Meta John so he can do the etching. So I was sent out this symbol from the client. What he wants to do is he wants to use this for the base, which is kind of cool. This is red, and then these are blue and white. So we're going to try to come up with a little bit of a system. So what I like to do is I like to measure out like the base, get an idea where things are going to go. The idea too is I would like his feet to kind of sit like that way, so as if his feet are going onto the base like this. Sometimes it's better to just take get an idea where this is. So if this is kind of there, just sort of chop out a chunk here, and then this gives me an idea of like a little bit of easier placement. So if we put him on the base like so, we can see where things are going. Now I don't mind that the foot's going over these pieces. It's over there is where I didn't want that etching to hit that metal. Because if the etching hits that metal, we might run into problems. So I think that looks pretty good. I think that'll be a good position, something like that. You can, if you're good enough, you can lift them up. You can sort of turn it, like if you want it a different way. But I think the position is pretty decent that way. So what I like to do is after that sort of get my pencil. Meta John's good at positioning all this, so I just kind of give him a better like idea of where, you know, this should go. Alright, so that's that idea. So then we just take the ruler. Doesn't have to be perfect, it just gives him a better idea of where to put this piece. So we just kind of... So that'll give him an idea of like where I at least want this positioned. You know, he'll center it, he'll do a better job of what I just did, but it'll give him an idea of what to do. So that's pretty much ready to go. So what I'll do too is, just to be on the safe side, is take this piece of tape and just kind of put it here for now. What I will do too is I'll go into Illustrator and I'll illustrate this a little bit better, because right now it was just a Photoshop file sent to me, so it's probably better that he has the Illustrator lines to go off of, and that is pretty much ready to be sent. So I just got like one or two other items I got to set up for him, and I can mail these out. But while this is pretty much ready to go, I'm going to just at least pull out the Bucky base and put him on there and display him and, you know, get him away. But we're going to try to get this done first and then go from there. Alright, so we are all finished up. Sort of a messy video. I know it's not in depth detail, but this was something I needed to get these out the door. But I wanted to kind of share, a little bit of an experience on how you can take like a Bowen Bust and a full size and swap out the parts. A lot of the Bowen stuff is fairly in scale. I've really never come across anything that wasn't really too in scale. He was pretty good of keeping the bust and the full sizes in scale. So these legs from Bucky absolutely worked perfect for Captain Britain. I can't really think of any other statue that have worked out as well as this. So I'm pretty happy with it. The client is pretty happy as well. It won't take up a lot of room in his collection too, which is a good thing because, if you collect a lot of statues like any of the other collectors out there, room and space becomes an issue. So with the Bowen stuff, by cutting down the base and doing a simple base like this for him, he'll be able to put it in his collection with his other teams, and there shouldn't be any issues. As far as the Star Brand bust, that worked out pretty well, and that's kind of the cool thing about this whole little custom setup. We were able to take a Bucky full size, chop it in half, utilize the legs, and still utilize the bust of Bucky for another character. A simple character. I don't know much about Star Brand. I will actually go in when I get a chance and read up on the character, but that's kind of cool with this whole setup. I think the only item that really where you didn't utilize was the original base that came with Bucky, but that thing is like this big, like tall, I think, something like that, and big. But this is cut down more for his setup, which is kind of cool. So I like doing stuff like this. Every once in a while I like going back to some of these old characters I've never even read up on, I don't know anything about. It's probably for a lot of us older collectors that grew up with these characters that are never going to see the light of day, but it worked out pretty well. So this person is going to get these two items in their collection that probably will never ever see in anyone else's collections, which is kind of cool, and it worked out pretty well. So as far as Captain Britain's base, I'll kind of just show you that real quick, a little bit more detail. So what I did was I pretty much kind of did a marble look, as you can see. And then what I did is I did the red and the blue there. And then what I did is added that piece underneath there so it doesn't screw up the bottom of anything. And so basically I did a clear coat of Duplicolor out of the can, and I let that dry for 2 days because usually say it takes like 24 to 48 hours before another coat. I did it in 2 days because I've been working on other stuff. And then what I did is I wet sanded it down, I buffed it up, did another coat, and then 2 days later I did another coat. So it's nice and fairly smooth. It's a little bit shiny, and I think it worked for him pretty well. And as far as Star Brand, these symbols actually worked out really well. So when my friend met John in Canada did the etching of the base, I asked him if he could get me some of these symbols because it would be a nightmare to try to sculpt these symbols out. So what he did is he etched these out in a plexiglass. He said it took a couple tries. He gave me a whole bunch of different sizes, and then what I did is I Dremel out the area, and then what I did was just kind of push these in there and let it dry with some magic sculpt on eaves. And then after that I sanded it down and primed up. This whole Bucky base in the Star Brand was not a full-blown, like, we wanted a super detailed, put all your work. It was kind of like a afterthought, and it wasn't something that we didn't go crazy because he didn't really want to go and put a lot of effort into it, but he still wanted the character in his collection. So it's very simplified, not a lot of thought, and it just worked out pretty well. Even the hair was fairly simple for me. We kind of went with that flowing hair mullet look and stuff, so it worked. But all in all, I think this custom setup was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to read up on these characters a little bit more when I get a chance. And that is pretty much how you can swap out legs for Bowens Bust. A lot of the DC stuff out there that are busts, you could actually probably find like anime girl kits legs, and you could probably add those legs to some of those DC female, like the Bombshell stuff or whatever out there. I don't know. There's probably options out there. You just gotta kind of find stuff in scale. But with the Bowen stuff, everything pretty much works that I've come across. So with that being said, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you know these characters at all. I will get a chance. I'll read up on them. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back with some more.